Wonderful, thank you, Sisterhood. We missed, in this whole situation of pivoting online, we really missed having Sisterhood as part of our regular scheduled lineup of programming, and we're so glad you're back, and so glad to have Laura Frankel back in our virtual and her real kitchen and our virtual kitchen for us to enjoy and learn from you. Thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind, as people, Zoom etiquette of muting yourself, but feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question, etc. Just so if there's any background noise, it doesn't filter in and become a distraction to Laura while she's teaching and everything. Just a few words, because the title is Why Cheesecake on Shavuot? So I apologize, this will be a little bit repetitious to people who learned last night as well from Rabbi Dror, but I just wanted to share a few tidbits, and I found a couple other ones. So it is traditional to have dairy on Shavuot, and Israel is, of course, likened to a land. It's called a land flowing with milk and honey throughout the Torah, so that is one strong reason why we have dairy on Shavuot. And also in the Song of Songs, it says milk and honey are under your tongue. So again, another reason that points us to dairy. And then in Numbers, it describes the sacrificial meal offering on Shavuot. In the initials of it, it spells me halav, from milk. So suggesting that dairy food is the acceptable dinner for Shavuot in particular. And another interesting tidbit is that the numerical value of the word chalav, every letter in Hebrew, of course, has a numerical equivalent. It's called gematria. That's how we get chai, for example, which stands for 18, why we give donations in, multiplications of 18. So the numerical value of chalav is 40, which is an important number because we think of the 40 days and nights that Moshe stayed up on Sinai. So that is another point to put us to dairy. And then there are a few other items I could go into, but I just want to leave us with this last one, which is that, of course, on Sinai, our experience was to get the Torah, however you understand that particular experience of revelation. And part of that experience was having the rules of kashrut. So there's a teaching that we didn't know the rules of kashrut, and then we were first given them, and it was very confusing, and we didn't know quite where to start. So the first place to start was keep it simple, and keeping it simple meant keeping it dairy, because they didn't, of course, have extra, cookware, and they didn't have the utensils to be kosher meat, et cetera, et cetera. So our rabbis teach us that sort of retroactively, they said, let's keep it dairy for now, and then we'll work into having meat at some point on our journey. So with that said, we have many reasons that point us to dairy on Shavuot. Thank you for learning. And now I turn it over to learn actually how to implement the dairy and be able to eat delicious dairy. And Laura will take over and tell us a little bit about herself, what she's up to these days.
So thank you for having me. And I miss my city friends at Anshe Shalom. Nice to see everybody. And thanks for coming up to my kitchen. And I feel like what you were just saying, kind of like we're waiting for the Torah and for the laws of kashrut and stuff, and we didn't have like a lot of stuff. I feel like we're kind of there now, kind of pantry cooking, making do with what you have, making less trips to the store. And I feel like the dishes that I'm showing you tonight might go along with that sort of theme. We are going to do a cheesecake, and then I was going to do this fun. Am I getting an echo or something? Am I delayed? Okay, I'm hearing myself. Anyway, so then I've got this spaghetti pie, which is kind of somewhere between a kugel and macaroni and cheese. It's a Roman dish, and it's very similar, if anyone's been to Rome and seen on menus, the famous dish called cacio e pepe. So it means cheese and pepper, and it's a great dish, and it's fun to make and kind of a fun twist for the holiday. So let's start with our cheesecake first. And cheesecakes are like one of those things that are so seemingly simple, but there's like some tricks along the way that can have you ending up with a fantastically wonderful cheesecake, or one that's, not so wonderful. Maybe it tastes delicious, but it's not so pretty. So I want to err on the side of pretty. So come with me over here. So I've got, one of my tips is when you have a springform pan, I line my pan with parchment. So the springform pan is one of the cool pans. You can get this kind with this kind of a release, or I've got this one with this slide bar that comes out. And all I did was I put a piece of parchment here so that when I want to get the cheesecake out of the pan tomorrow, it would slide off my parchment and then I put it right onto my serving cardboard disc. You don't want to serve it on the pan because then you slice into it and then your bottom of your pan gets all these slice marks and stuff. So to further ensure that, because I like my insurance policies and I like things to work, I've got some softened butter here, and I'm just gonna butter just the bottom, not the sides. And I don't have to go crazy here with it. I just need enough to make sure that we can slip this off. Okay, and that you can do ahead of time and set it aside. No big freakouts. My other insurance policy is that I line my pan with parchment paper. So if my pan did leak somehow, it goes on here and I don't have to clean up my whole oven. So there's two ways to cook cheesecake. One is to cook it straight ahead in the oven like you bake a cake. And the other way is to cook it in a water bath. So the water bath is great. It works wonderfully. It's fantastic. It's also cumbersome. It's hot. It's schwitzy. It's a pain. But I like this method better, the baking method. And I'm going to show you how to do it with minimal problems and no cracks. So here we go. So in my bowl here, I've got measured out. I've got graham cracker crumbs. You can use chocolate cookie crumbs. And I've got powdered espresso and a little bit of sugar. You can use the chocolate cookie crumbs instead of the graham cracker crumbs because we're doing a mocha cheesecake. I just like graham cracker and I love coffee, so the two together are like heaven for me. I've got some melted butter here. And I'm just gonna mix these two together real quick. And when you're baking, I think even more so than when you're doing any other things in the kitchen, it's really important to have everything measured out. So I've got everything I need here at my fingertips so I don't have to stop what I'm doing and then quickly run in the refrigerator and find something, because that's when things go bad. So I've got all of this done ahead of time, and then recipes kind of just pull together themselves. And this looks really pretty with the little espresso pieces in here. So espresso powder is instant espresso. You can easily buy it at any grocery store or online. You can also use like a little bit of brewed coffee mixed in with your butter if you want. All right, so then with my hand, I just pat this into place. And I'm gonna go up the sides a little bit. So I'm just gonna push it into place and it goes up the sides, kind of all on its own. And that's gonna give us that nice look where when it's done baking, you're gonna see a little bit of the crust, and then above that, you see the cheesecake. You would do this with your chocolate cookie crumbs as well. And if you can't find crumbs, just buy whatever cracker or cookie you like and just post it in your food processor to end up with the crumbs. And I feel like the less trips we're making to the store, the better everything is. So we're just getting by on what you already have, and what you already have is fine. All right, so this is going in here. And you can do this ahead of time, and now I'm gonna just go ahead and bake it. And I'm gonna set my timer and I'm gonna get busy. I've got my oven preheated here, and I'm gonna set my timer for 7 minutes.
Right, Laura, there's a question.
Yes.
Did you mix butter or something liquid to mix with all the crumbs so it presses together? Oh, and then I see it was answered melted butter. Okay.
Yep, just the butter. Okay, so that part's done. Let me get this out of our way. So for part of the part that makes this a mocha cheesecake, I've got a little bit of milk chocolate here. And I've got more of our espresso powder because mocha is that chocolate coffee thing that's so delicious. And this kind of a take on a cheesecake is almost like tiramisu, one of my favorite things on the planet. Another great dish for the holiday. But so I kind of combined flavors of tiramisu with cheesecake. So I've got some hot water here, and I think most of my hot water does a bit more. Here. Okay, so I'm just gonna mix my chocolate and my espresso together and stir this together until I get this lovely mixture. My husband's my cameraman. If you have any problems with the camera, you know who to talk to. We've been doing this now for a couple of years. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm the founder of Shallot's Restaurants here in Chicago and in New York. The kosher restaurants that started out in the city and then moved to the suburbs, and the restaurant that was in Midtown Manhattan. And I also worked for Wolfgang Puck as the executive chef for 10 years. And I was the culinary director for Jamie Geller, Test Kitchen, and Kosher Network International. And right now I am the director of catering at Circle of Life at Bethel in Highland Park. I've owned 3 restaurants and have loved every second of my career. I feel like I'm lucky and blessed to have found what I love to do. I love cooking, and what I love to do even more than cook is teach cooking. And if somehow I can combine my 3 favorite things, which are cooking, teaching, and listening to jazz together, all 3 at the same time, I'm done. I am fulfilled. All right, so I've got my mix here, and this looks yummy. It smells very delicious. It smells like tiramisu. All right, and so now to work on our mix. So in my bowl here, I've got my cream cheese, and it's really important for the cream cheese to be at room temperature. You don't want it to be in any way coming right out of the refrigerator cold. So plan a little bit ahead of time. You can leave it out for a few hours. I don't think you want to leave it out overnight. You could leave butter out overnight, but cream cheese, not so much. But a couple of hours is fine. So I've got my cream cheese in here. I've got my sugar. And I've got 2 eggs. I'm going to hold off on my eggs for a second. I'm going to mix this. So I'm using the paddle on my mixer. I want to show you I'm using the paddle, not the whip. The trick to not having cracks is to not get too much air into the cheesecake. So we really want this to be a little bit dense, but we're going to lighten it up with the eggs. You just don't want air into it. The air, when the cheesecake cooks, it'll poop up a little bit too much, and then when it cools down, it'll contract, and that's how you get those cracks. It's like fissures in the top. So this is just going to mix a little bit, and then you see how it's kind of climbing up the sides of the bowl. I'm going to scrape that down. I want to make sure it's a really nice, even mix, that all of the cream cheese gets mixed in there with the sugar, and then again with the eggs. So I'm take my bowl, take it down off the riser here, and just make sure it's mixed. And then I'm going to add my eggs one at a time. And the same thing. You can see that it's kind of climbing up the bowl again. And that's just the nature of the beast. That's just how this works. Any mixer is going to do that. So I bring it back down, take the time to do this. And I do this with every cake to make sure that everything gets mixed. And then our last egg. Okay, you can see it's already this lovely, very creamy mix. If you have little spots of cream cheese that kind of are persistent and they're not getting mixed in there, and I can't really find if maybe there's a little bit there, don't worry about that. It's going to melt when you're baking. So don't get all worried that it's just going to be these blobs in there. As long as they're little tiny pieces, it's okay. One more mix. All right, that looks beautiful. I'm going to check our crust because I can hear my timer going off. And it looks great. It's dark. You can see that it's looking nice and crispy a little bit. So I'm just going to take this off and let it cool for a second while I finish the cheesecake. And then vanilla. When we're working with recipes that have so few ingredients and really just a handful of ingredients in this recipe, you want to use the best that you can, especially when we're talking about flavor. So vanilla extract is the flavor here, as well as the chocolate. But vanilla is like really pretty integral to a cheesecake. So I have 3 different kinds of vanilla. I've got one from Mexico, I've got a Madagascar, and then I've got a Tahitian one that you can easily find here in Chicago. Can you touch that? Yep.
Uh-oh,
Right,
we're having camera issues.
all right, so whatever works for you, but get a good vanilla because that's a really important part of the flavor here.
What a vanilla bean.
So you can use vanilla beans too. I love vanilla beans. And vanilla beans are my go-to thing when I'm talking about Passover because the kosher Le Pesach vanilla isn't so delightful. But right now, we've got the vanilla extract, and I'm using my Madagascar, which is this beautiful floral smell. I never measure my vanilla. I've never made a dish that had too much vanilla in it, but I'm going to go for a couple of teaspoons. And if I went a little bit over, oh well. So that gets mixed. All right, wonderful. So now I take this down. And I just scrape it off because I don't want to lose any of this good stuff here. All right. And I will just park it over here. And then I'm going to take my spatula and go down to the bottom of the bowl to make sure that there's no little pockets of cream cheese hiding down there that didn't get mixed. And I would do this for any cake just to make sure that sometimes your beaters don't get all the way to the bottom. We're in luck this time. And then with our chocolate, got our mocha mix here, remember? Which smells amazing. And I'm going to take about a cup of this mix and I'm going to kind of marry it here with my chocolate. And you can use white chocolate if you like. You can use a bittersweet chocolate. I just like that whole idea of a tiramisu. So that's why I'm going with the milk chocolate. But if you've got bittersweet chocolate at home, go for it. If you've got white chocolate, enjoy. And you get this lovely mixture, and really right now you could just stop and eat that if you want. All right, so now our batter goes into the crust. And I'm being really careful not to move the crust too much because I don't want to stir up crumbs. I want them to stay down there. So by the way, if you want to do some of this ahead of time, you can go ahead and make your crust a day or two beforehand and just wrap it in plastic and leave it at room temperature and it'll be fine. I love stuff you can do ahead. And now I'm just going to spread my batter here. And this is already great right now, but we can do better. So I've got all our chocolate mix here, and I'm just gonna make little marks with it. I'm gonna use it all too, by the way. And this is a fun thing for the kids to do if you've got kids baking with you, or husband, or wives, or whoever you've got baking with you. Have fun with it. This is where you can get really fun and creative. And now I'm just gonna swirl it. I'm gonna take the back of my spoon and just start zigzags. So when you do this, don't go too far that you feel your crust, because you'll stir up crumbs. And what this does is, you can see, not only is it going to look really pretty after it's done baking, but you're going to get these pockets of just the vanilla and then some with just the coffee. So it's like this wonderful, like, coffee tiramisu, coffee candy, coffee everything. I love coffee. It's my joy. All right. And then to kind of settle it down and taste it, it's a little bit hot, pan. So I'm just going to give it a little shake and make sure it's leveled off of the pan. All right. Easy, right? This is cheesecake, guys. Super easy. No one's having any problems yet. My pan's a tiny bit hot. It's a lot hot. And then in the oven it goes. So my oven for the crust was at 350. But I don't want to cook this too fast, because what will happen is the eggs in there will cause the whole mixture to puff up, and then as it cools down, it'll sink and contract. I don't want that to happen because it'll cause cracking. So I'm going to lower my oven to about 325 and actually open the door here. And I've got my convection oven on. If you don't have a convection oven, don't worry about it. It's just what I have and it works for me, so go for it. So in this goes, and I'm just going to let the door sit open for about 2 seconds here. And now I'm going to set my timer. And the directions I gave you, I believe, say about 25 to 35 minutes. I'm going to set it for 20 just to show you what it looks like when it's jiggling still, okay? So let me clean up over here real quick. Anyone have any questions? You guys are like following, somebody's eating popcorn.
Does the rack position matter?
Does the position, the rack position. So I put mine up in the upper third of the oven, and that's typically where you want to do most of your baking. If you're doing roasting, like a chicken or even a piece of fish, you want to put it kind of closer to the middle towards the bottom so the fan blows over it more. But I want mine up to, I don't want the fan blowing across it too much. I don't want a crust on top. So it does matter, but it's, you know, it's not the world, end of the world. All right, anyone else have any questions? All right, let's keep going. So I've got over here, and this is, we're gonna do our spaghetti pie. This is one of my favorite dishes. It's fun, it's easy, it's delicious. And I've got another springform pan here with cheesecake in it. And I love my insurance policies. Again, in case this leaks in the oven, I've wrapped my pan in foil, and I've got another sheet pan with parchment on it. I'm gonna grease the bottom and the sides of my pan, no parchment on. And I'm using a high quality butter because, again, this recipe has just a handful of ingredients, and I always use unsalted butter, not salted. Okay. So over here, I'm going to heat up I've got my milk here, land of milk and honey. Here comes the milk. And then I've got 3 kinds of cheeses. Again, we're pantry cooking, so whatever cheese you have in your house. What's so funny?
I just beat it.
Oh, okay. I've got a little bit of Parmesan. I've got a little bit of mozzarella. And I'm saving a little bit for the topping. I'm pulling back some.
Can you use almond milk instead of regular?
You can use almond milk. I was hoping somebody would ask almond milk, or you can use oat milk as well. Oat milk is wonderful. I love oat milk. So the land of milk and honey in a modern world is whatever milk works for you. And I've got a little bit of a Gruyere. So I'm going to just stir this. And to make this the pepe part of it, because it's cacio e pepe, pepe means pepper. Ta-da! And I like a lot of pepper, so do as much as you want. But that cheesiness, that spicy pepper flavor kind of breaks up some of the richness of it, but not too much. And this is like the simplest version. This is why I said it's kind of somewhere between a kugel, because it's baked in a pan, and somewhere between a macaroni and cheese. So once it starts to melt, I pull it off the fire and I work my eggs into it. I've got 3 eggs here, and I don't want them to become scrambled. So I just sort of barely heated it up. And then I just whip these here together. And this is like one of those very simple Italian dishes that it's just a couple of ingredients. And you can see it's already thick and creamy. And then back on the heat for a few seconds. Just to make sure our cheese is melted all the way. I'm going to add a pinch of salt. And when I'm cooking, no matter whether I'm baking, whether I'm frying, sauteing, I've got a grill under here, whatever I'm doing, I set myself up for success. So I'm always ready to go with what I need. I've got my salt here, and I'm using a sea salt. This is my cooking sea salt, and then I've got a little bit of my garnish salt. So this is the stuff that I sprinkle on top of like beautiful tomatoes or an Israeli salad. I want those flecks of salt. I'm ready to go with this. I've got my chili flakes, because some like it hot. This girl likes it hot. I've got my pepper grinder. I've got like 2 kinds of pepper grinders because I like pepper. And then this is another salt grinder. It's got pink sea salt in it. But what I'm saying is that, and this is yet another kind of salt, because I'm a chef, I like to have all my tools at hand. Whatever you're cooking, set yourself up so you're ready to go. You're not running around the kitchen going like, oh my God, where is everything? And it's easy to do that in a modern world where we're working from home. You've got conference calls going on. You got Zoom over here. There's dogs, there's kids, there's whatever's going on. It's easy to like lose track of stuff, but keep it simple for yourself. So I always have this here in every professional kitchen. I'm a chef. Every kitchen I've ever worked in, we always have our tools nearby. These are my dairy tools. Here's my flake tools, just so I can grab it right away and reach it. So get yourself set up and you'll be such a happier cook. All right, someday we'll do a knife class. One of our classes, Liz and Benita, we should do a knife skills class. I love talking about knives because it's all fun and games when you're making a dish until it comes time to chop stuff up. And then it's like, oh my God. All right, so this is mix. There. And I've got my cooked pasta. And for this dish, it is spaghetti. That is the dish. So it's cooked already, and I cooked it al dente. It's actually still quite hot on my fingers. You can see the steam coming off of it. And then I just toss it all together till I make sure that every single noodle is coated beautifully in here. This couldn't be easier. So like, forget the quiches and all the crusts, forget the blitz souffle is good, like if you're really into it, but this is so easy. It's fun. It's delicious. You can use goat cheese. In a pinch, you can use cottage cheese with your mozzarella cheese, whatever you want. This is just so wonderful and easy to do. All right, so everything's tossed and cheesy, and you can kind of see, I mean, I could almost just stop here and throw it on a plate, right? But no, we're not going to do that. I've got my prepared plant pan. So in my pan, it goes. Okay, and that's already delicious and wonderful. And I held back some of the cheese that I didn't sprinkle it all on, and I'm just going to put it on the top here. So we get like a little crust. Why not, right? Go for it. And then my favorite ingredient again, tiny bit of pepper. And then this also goes in the oven. Okay, so that's going in. So I got two things going. This is like dinner, guys. Easy, no sweat. So I gave you another recipe for cheesecake stuffed strawberries. Again, super easy. And I love this one because we're home all the time now. And it's like easy to just have a quick snack. It's healthy-ish because it's fruit, right? It's healthy. And strawberries are in season. So I'm a big seasonal cook. In my pastry bag here, and I've got a tip on it. And if you don't have, these are disposable pastry bags. You can buy them online. If you don't have a pastry bag, use a Ziploc bag. Use a tip. I'm going to cut off my tip. I've got my cream cheese that I've softened up with a little bit of Greek yogurt, a little bit of sugar, our vanilla extract. Use a good one, please. And then fresh lemon zest. And I've got some seasonal strawberries. You can get these at the farmer's market very soon. And all I did was I just took a little measuring spoon. I took the baby one here, the 1/8, and I just scoop out some of the hull here and make myself a little pocket. And then I just squeeze my filling in here. Easy. These are like a fun snack to have laying around. They're like a great end for just a quick bite. And then if you're an overachiever, you can melt some dark chocolate or white chocolate or again milk chocolate, and you dip this end into the chocolate and then put these on a plate in the refrigerator for about an hour or so till the chocolate sets up, and you have a gluten-free, delicious cheesecake stuffed strawberry. Yum, who doesn't want that? By the way, you can dip them in chocolate and also dip it in nuts. So go for that too. All right, so our cheesecake is going. We've got about 9 minutes. Does anyone have any questions? Somebody, food questions.
I had a question about the oven.
Yep.
Because when you mentioned about like the air circulating over, it's a convection oven particular, right? If
Yes.
you don't have a convection oven, do the same rules apply in terms of
Not really.
spacing?
It doesn't matter. So on a radiant oven, you've got the heat elements at the bottom of the oven. And if you put the cheesecake too close to the bottom will get cooked more than the whole thing. So we want it to be like up near the middle towards the top third, just so that the heat is more away from it. If you put it right on the bottom, it's going to get too crispy at the bottom.
Right. And then for your other foods, like you mentioned, like roasting chicken or fish and that type of one.
That goes towards the bottom. That's where you want that. So
Okay.
those things are, if you think about roasting towards the bottom, baking towards the top.
Thank you.
Yep. So let me show you what the cheesecake, stay there, looks like at the end. I've got a finished one here. Somewhere here. But you need it, right? over here. So here's our marbled cheesecake, finished. And all I did was I took a little bit more of our milk chocolate and I used a vegetable peeler. I softened the chocolate just at room temperature. I didn't do anything fancy to it. I used my vegetable peeler to get these big shards here, chocolate. And you can see the marbling here. And if you look at the sides, you can see I went up with the crust a little bit around the sides here. Ta-da! Any questions, anybody? You guys are good. Any questions about anything? My previous life as a butcher, I can cut meat, anything you want. Duck, my favorite thing to cook, salmon. All right.
Oh, so there are a couple of questions.
Yep.
One person says, should I be careful not to bump the cheesecake when I put the spaghetti pie in?
No, it doesn't matter. That thing's going now. And what's going to happen is the eggs are going to cause it to tighten up. So it's just going to be cooked. And we're marbling it, so you're not going to get like a perfect pattern here. If you look at this one, it's got like just, you know, variations on it. You can see I went a little wilder over here than here. It just looks great. And what's more important is that it tastes delicious. And if it's, for some reason it did crack, which it didn't, but if it did, which I don't think you will if you follow my directions, I could cover it with this chocolate. Nobody will know.
And the person is wondering, what brand of knives do you use in your home?
That's a great question. I love cooking questions. So I've been a professional chef for almost 30 years. And I've owned, as I said, 3 restaurants. I was the executive chef for Wolfgang Puck. I traveled the country doing kosher food for him. I was from in LA to Napa to the other side of the country. I cooked overseas. I cooked everywhere. I cooked in Israel. I've done it all. But my knives are kind of like my important constant. So I'll show you a couple of knives. And I'm going to pull out my dairy knives. And I will show you, and this is a German knife for contrast to show you. So these are my Japanese knives. These two are Japanese, and they're chef's knives, and they're, how you know it's a good knife is it's called full tang, T-A-N-G. It's one piece of metal from the tip all the way down here. And what that means is that it's heavily weighted, and you want it to be perfect.
No knife class.
No knife class. My husband doesn't want me to do a knife class. My favorite knife, that one you should buy when you go buy a knife, or if you're buying a gift, you don't need to buy the whole set. This is my favorite knife. It's an all-purpose utility cleaver, and it's made by Global, G-L-O-B-A-L. It's a hybrid between a European and a Japanese knife. It's one piece of metal. It's perfect. It does absolutely everything.
You only need 2 knives.
How many inches are these knives? Does that?
So this is a 8-inch blade. And even if you're not a professional chef, I highly recommend it. You get used to it. And when fall comes around and you get those big butternut squashes and acorn squashes and stuff, this is the knife that'll go through it. What's not going to go through it is this. And so I do a lot of catering in people's homes. I'm for hire. And I do a lot of catering, and I go into people's houses and they hand me this, or sometimes this.
How do you sharpen knives?
Don't do that to me.
Someone else.
How do you sharpen knives? So this is called a steel, a honing steel. It hones the blade, which means it just takes out any of the little burrs or imperfections that happen from constant cutting. But to sharpen knives, I actually let professionals do it. I take it downtown
Northwest
on West Lake to Northwestern Cutlery. And they do a fabulous job there. Drop your knives off, go get a cup of coffee, and it's all good. And I sharpen my knives a couple of times a year. In our professional kitchen, we sharpen our knives once a week. And a good rule of thumb is to do it like before Pesach and maybe right before Sukkot. So it's kind of like at opposite ends of the year, because those are typically when we're cooking and eating, right? All right, so let's look at our cheesecake.
Yeah, there's a question about, the recipe says 35 to 45 minutes. What time is best?
So right now we're down to 3 minutes, almost 3 minutes left on the timer, but I want to show you what this looks like. And it's still a little jiggly in the center, but you can see the sides are puffed up. I'm going to close this real quick. And I want it to still be jiggly in the middle, but this is a little too much. I want it to be just barely moving when I nudge it. But you could see, if you could see, it's like a little bit convex here. It's puffed up a little bit. So the sides are already set. I can touch them, see? So it's close. You don't want to go too far with this. I don't want any browning here. So I'm just going to put it back in for a few more minutes.
Are there any tricks of the trade to sort of cooking more than one thing at a time, multiple dishes at the same time?
So I'm lucky I have 2 ovens, one down here and one here. But in all honesty, when you're serving a meal, I love it when people do some things at room temperature and some things hot, even something cold. So even my Thanksgiving meal, I'll serve 1 or 2 items that are meant to be at room temperature while everything else is hot. If you try to do every single thing hot in most home kitchens with one home chef, you're gonna go out of your mind. It's just not even possible. So I love to do things kind of mixed up that way. I also use my range sometimes to hold things for me. So I'll hold a vegetable dish at very low heat, or I'll cover it, or I'll put it in a steamer to keep it warm. I wrote a book for slow cookers. So the slow cooker is also your best friend for keeping food hot, and it doesn't heat up your whole house. So you could put something in the slow cooker and just turn it on, and it'll keep your food hot while not heating up the whole house. And this time of year, over the last few days, it's been really hot. And you don't want to like crank up the ovens and stuff. So plan your menus. I'm gonna let this set for like another 3 minutes, and then it's done. And that
Hey,
is
Laura, my question about putting multiple things in the oven was more about roasting. So if I have 2 things that I'm putting in at 400 or 425, I've noticed lately that whatever's on the bottom does not seem to roast as much as what's on the top.
So it depends on what it is, but if you're roasting things, you want to make sure that they're of the same size and the same density. If you put a chicken in the oven, and then you also put like some carrots in the oven, the carrots are going to cook a lot faster than the chicken. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. So you want to time yourself a little bit. And also I would start things, a denser object, or your proteins usually, start those first and then add your veggies at the end. Does that make sense?
My question was more about like top and bottom. Like if I have 2 different things, what kind of
oven do you have?
A conventional. I'm not using the convection.
So it just might
electric.
be, right. So ovens are notoriously have hot spots in them, and you might want to play with your oven a little bit. If we look in my oven over here real quick, even though I have really accurate ovens, I always have a thermometer here in my oven that tells me what's going on. And that's every oven I cook in. So there's one here, there's one here. I have one in my grill outside. So I know what I'm looking at before I go in. And every time I open the oven door, I glance at it. So put an oven, a thermometer in your oven and check it out. And I bet if you move it around, you'll find out the hot spots. So, and that's just natural. That's just the way ovens work. A fan sort of mitigates some of that and blows the air around, but still, it's baking, so the heat elements are at the bottom. And if something's close to the bottom, it's going to cook more. It's just the way it is. So you got to play with it a little bit and rotate your food. I hope that helped.
Thank you.
All right, so we're almost done. So here we go. It's cheesecake time. So the cheesecake is coming out, and it's still, I'm going to turn this up now real quick. So the cheesecake is still a tiny bit jiggly, but you can see it's now a little more set. You see that? I hope you could see that here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let it cool down for a few minutes, and then I'm just going to loosen the edges from around the pan. And I do that so that when it contracts, because right now it's expanded out because of the heat, but as it cools overnight, it's going to contract like this, and that's when cracks form. So I'm going to take out my little paring knife, and I just take tiny little cuts. I'm not even cutting, I'm just loosening here along the edges. You can see it's really set because you can see I'm creating a space here. I'm not slicing into it, I'm actually pushing against my pan. And that's all that took. That was nothing. So now to cool this down, I'm gonna cool it gently. I don't wanna like just go rip roaring, taking it out of the pan right now. Instead, I'm gonna cool it very gently. I'm gonna take a plate. I cover the top of the cheesecake with a plate. I put the entire setup, I might take it off the sheet pan, but I put the entire thing in my refrigerator overnight, or at least 4 hours, so it cools down, and then I remove it from this pan. If I try to remove it from the pan right now, it would probably ooze out the side. So we want this to set up. Remember, it's cream cheese. When it's in the refrigerator, it's cold, it's hard to cut it. The eggs have now cooked it through, but when it cools down, it'll be a beautiful slicing cheesecake. So what I would do is I cover this, I put a piece of parchment over it, and then cover it with a plate or a piece of foil or whatever, so it cools down very slowly overnight in the fridge. Does that make sense? So you want to make that cooling part, that's where cracks come in, and you want to make sure that this stays nice and pretty and so that it looks great tomorrow. So planning ahead for the cheesecakes. That's all that takes. And let's check our pie. And I can actually slice my cheesecake here. Mike, do you mind if I slice the cheesecake?
No, I don't know.
My husband's happy he's getting a slice of cheesecake. Before the holidays, your pre-holiday slice.
Somebody had a question, what are your other most favorite types of cheesecakes, and do you ever do them with a sour cream topping?
I love sour cream topping. It's like sour cream and I are best friends. To have sour cream is for me to eat sour cream, so I do love that. And that's a great way to finish off like a lemon cheesecake because it's got that tanginess to it. I love it. I was just showing you this as a fun option, so let me get a plate for this. But I love sour cream. Along with sour cream, I love rhubarb. If I had like farmer's market rhubarb right now, and I'd be doing a strawberry rhubarb cheesecake for you. Hang on.
While you're slicing, there's a question about vegan cheesecake or spaghetti. Is it possible to make the spaghetti pie vegan?
To make it vegan?
Yes.
Yes, so back to using our oat milk and to use like one of your favorite vegan cheeses, a cashew cheese. Another great thing to do with the spaghetti pie is to add veggies to it. So all you want to do is you're making a custard. So the custard was the milk, the eggs, and the cheese. Leave the cheese out and add veggies to it. Add kale, add sauteed mushrooms, add caramelized onions to it. A caramelized onion would be like amazing. It would be almost like an onion soup thing. But you can see, so here's our sliced cheesecake, and you see a little bit of the chocolate ribbon in there, the mocha, and my crust here, and beautiful layers. My husband took it. No cracks. And check our pie.
Are other pastas okay to use in the spaghetti pie? Have you made it with other types, shapes?
Other pastas work. I just like using the spaghetti when we unmold this. It just looks really cool, and when you slice it, it makes a nice, neat, tidy package. But if you have penne at home, you've got macaroni at home, go for it. This just looks really pretty, and you can see it's cheesy and amazing and delicious. I'm not going to unmold it because I really want it to cook and get crispy and brown on the top, but you can see it's already crispy here a little bit. I want it to be a little bit darker. But I hope you've enjoyed this class. I look forward to doing more classes for you. I believe I've sent some ideas. So I hope we get to see each other again. If there's any last questions, please ask. And I hope everyone has a wonderful and happy Hag Sameach. And I hope everyone stays safe, well, and thank you for having me as part of your holiday. Take care.
And I want to add, thank you so much, Laura. It was great to have you back with the Sisterhood. And thanks to Liz for hosting, being our staff host. And thank you, Benita Cohen, for planning our first Zoom. And she's got a couple other Zoom programs in the works as well. So stay tuned.
Yes, and they're definitely knife questions. So I think a knife class would be good, and salmon questions. So I think we need
salmon.
to follow up.
Wild salmon, yay. High holidays.
Beautiful.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone. Stay healthy, stay well. Bye-bye.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Bye.